Hi, everyone. I'm Marcella Dominguez, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the AM Show. Today, I am so excited to bring you Diana Lopez, who wrote the adaptation for the film Coco, and she's going to be sharing her experiences about authoring this book and also how her artistic career ties to her day-to-day career as being a university professor. This is the AM Show with arts music lawyer, where ambition and motivation meet persistence and drive, where your wildest dreams come true and even the greatest possibilities become realities. Listen to people just like you who stay authentic to who they are and master the art of their craft. Are you sharing the art of you? The art of you is music to my ears. Stay focused, stay on track. Create a new lifestyle with ambition and motivation. The AM Show. So, Diana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. This is Diana Lopez, and I'm talking to you from Corpus Christi, Texas, my hometown. And I am the author of several middle grade books. My latest title is Lucky Luna, and I also wrote Coco, a story about music, shoes, and family, which is a novel adaptation of the Disney Pixar film. I've been an educator for 26 years now, part of that time at the middle school level, and the rest of that time at the college level. I work as an associate professor of English at the University of Houston, Victoria.
Nice. So I think, lots of people that are listening kind of want to dive into the meat of, what it is that you bring to the table for so many people, including small children, which is your book, which was an adaptation, like you said, of the movie Coco. So can you explain to us what that feeling was like? I mean, when you got a call from Disney or when you got a call from, someone over there who asked you to help in this process?
Well, I was thrilled. I grew up watching Disney films and reading the accompanying books. And back when I was a child, they came with records. And so we would put the record on the record player and sing the songs. And the books always had the lyrics. And just that whole world of reading. And also when you have a film, you have these kind of visuals, and Disney makes such beautiful films. But it's been a really long journey. It started a long time ago. I've been writing. My first book was published in 2002. And then I published my second book in 2009. So I've been regularly publishing since then. And it was that book, my Confetti Girl book, that got the attention of a Disney editor when she took a children's literature course in college and read it and thought of me when it came time to write the Coco adaptation. Disney wanted to hire writers that were familiar with the Mexican-American culture. And so I was just thrilled, that they thought of me. And when I heard the concept for the film, I had to say yes, because it had family, it had music, it had a little boy with a dream. It was a beautiful story, and I'm just thrilled that I got to be a part of it.
So walk us through what that experience was like once you said yes. I'm sure there were parameters, there were limitations, maybe circumstances under which you could add certain things or write certain things. So tell us about the creative process within those limitations and circumstances.
So my assignment was to take the screenplay and to expand on the screenplay without changing the overall story. And so I had 4 months to do. I had 4 months to do this, which for me is a extremely tight timeline. I don't write that fast usually, but I did have a story to work with, and I read the screenplay many times. And started to think about maybe instead of expanding Miguel's story, because his is so well told already, maybe looking at his ancestors and looking at Mama Coco and expanding their stories. So I kind of wrote a sort of proposal of what I thought I could add to it, and I sent it to the Disney editor, and she shared it with Adrian Molina, the screenwriter. And they gave me a thumbs up. They thought I had some great ideas. So I started working, and about 3 times during the process, I would share with my editor for some feedback. Mostly it was me saying, am I doing this right? I've never done anything like this. I want to make sure I'm, doing everything, the way that it's expected. And then I finished the book, and she shared it with Adrian Molina, the screenwriter, and he wrote back with some feedback. One of the things I remember he said was that he thought I could go a little easier on Mama Imelda. Because he said, yeah, she's a very strong, she has very strong convictions, but she's also, you can make her a little softer, so there was some collaboration, and I took all their suggestions to heart. Sometimes I had to push back just because when you write a novel, it's a little different than a screenplay in the sense that you have to work with point of view. And in some of the scenes in the film, there's nobody actually watching what's happening, especially the ones that have Dante in them, and we don't really have his point of view. So I had to kind of manipulate the story just a little bit. But it was a very supportive environment. I managed to meet my deadline. So I was real happy about that.
That's always a good thing, right?
Yes.
So once you were done, did they help or partake in the marketing of the book? What matters did you have to take into your own hands to sell or to profit from, your endeavors?
Well, the Coco adaptation marketing experience for me was so different than what I'm used to, because it has a built-in platform. I mean, it's Disney, it's got the film. I always tell my friends, I have my real writing goals and I have my fake writing goals. And one of my fake writing goals was, I would love to see a book at like Target and Walmart, because if it's at Target and Walmart, it's getting out there. Mm-hmm. And it's not a real goal, it's like a fake goal. But there was Coco, my book, at Target and Walmart. And so because of, it's not just the books that they publish, but they also have toys and clothes and, just all of these, what do they call it? Synergy, when you have all of these products related to the film. Mm-hmm. So it kind of marketed itself. Mm-hmm. I actually didn't reach out to people to promote the book, but people found out about it and they reached out to me. Usually when I write a book, a lot of the marketing kind of falls on my shoulders. Mm-hmm. It's me, contacting, people that I've met over the years and proposing visits and things like that. That didn't happen with this book. It was a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So I'm really pleased. It also made people start asking, who's Diana Lopez? What else has she written? And so in the publicity I got for Coco, I got to kind of tag along. My other books kind of got to tag along a little bit, which was really nice.
Yes, and that actually brings me to my next question. Is it kind of feels like your story has two parts. One is the pre-Coco, and one could maybe be the post-Coco. So since you have written books before Coco, and now that you have your new book post-Coco, how have those two different scenarios played out in terms of the effort that you have to put into marketing and how people recognize you as an author?
Well, certainly, I remember when I wrote my first book, Confetti Girl, my first middle grade book, I should say, and that was published by Little Brown. And they did a wonderful job of, they sent me to conferences and they helped me organize bookstores. It was great. And my book, Confetti Girl, resonated with a lot of readers. And so it's one of probably, outside of the Coco book, probably my most popular title. But I remember my next book came out, and that one was called Choke, and I was at a conference and just kind of sitting there, at the book signing part and just waiting for people to come up to me. And, it's just so hard. Got these big authors like right around the corner. Mm-hmm. And about an hour into this, I said, you know what, I should put my Confetti Girl book on the table, and I put it on the table, and then people started coming by and they were like, oh, you wrote they so I don't think people always remember the authors, I don't think they remember our names. Sometimes they don't remember our book titles, but they'll remember the covers. And Confetti Girl has a great cover. And so that's kind of like the pre-Coco thing. It's just, you're at these festivals or you're at these conferences, and there's always just really big writers right around the corner that people do know their names, so putting the Coco book on the table brings me a lot more attention just because it's so much more recognizable. And so, I have my Lucky Luna book. I'm really excited about, that's my latest publication. I'm really excited about it. I think it's a great story. And it's nice that I'm getting more invitations to speak about Coco, but along with that, I get to talk about Lucky Luna too. And so I'm sure that's helping with its distribution.
So talk to us about Lucky Luna. What was the inspiration for Lucky Luna? You tell readers listeners what it's about, and what you see post this Lucky Luna. Are you going to continue to write? Are you going to build off of Lucky Luna? Tell us more of an author's thought process. Okay, and let me just real quick. I should get my Lucky Luna book
yes. to show readers.
Yes.
I'm super excited about the cover. I'll talk about that in a little bit. It's a very special cover. Lucky Luna takes place in my hometown of Corpus Christi. So I moved back here after 31 years away just last year. And it's a middle grade novel about a girl who has so many primas, so many cousins. She can't count them all. And of course, some of them are her bitter enemies, and some of them are her good friends, so that's part of her journey. Another part or another kind of theme I'm working with is Luna speaks only English. Her grandmother speaks only Spanish. And she loves her grandmother. She goes to her for advice, but of course, there's that kind of communication gap, and so she often misunderstands what her grandmother's trying to tell her. And I was inspired for this book a lot by my own personal experiences as somebody with over 30 cousins, which is crazy, but also as somebody who whose grandfather spoke only Spanish and who really struggled to communicate with him. I think that is something a lot of young people and even older people have experienced, and not just Spanish speakers, but anybody who is, a third or fourth generation American is going to have this kind of language barrier. It's just what it is. So that's a little bit about Lucky Luna. Now, I don't remember, was there a second part of the question? I can't remember.
Yes, I probably lumped a few questions in there. And so what is your vision for post Lucky Luna? Do you want to write something that kind of stems from Lucky Luna, or are you going to write something completely independent as you have done in the past?
Well, Lucky Luna is the first book that I've written where I've imagined a sequel. I've kind of, from the very beginning, imagined it as a series, because I can just see going through adventures with a different cousin in each book. So I started working on that. I don't know if that's gonna fly. It kind of depends on how well Lucky Luna's doing. So I'm kind of right now, but I just decided I'm gonna start working on it because I'm enjoying the story. A lot of times when you're writing, you have to write without assurance of publication, and that happens actually most of the time. If you're a fiction writer, that happens most of the time, but you do it because you love it and because you feel invested in the characters and because you're sitting there and you're just laughing and you're having a good time. And so I never think of it, I've written things that have not been published that probably won't be published. I never think of it as wasted time because I enjoy the process so much. But that said, I'm not short on ideas. It's never, what am I going to write next? It's always, which story idea am I going to tackle next? So I feel very inspired just by the world around me yeah, I wish I had more time. I'm
That's
sure all of us do.
I think that that's very common with people who have such creative minds, is that it's never, as you said, there's never a lack of ideas. It's just which of the many ideas am I going to pursue next? So
Mhm.
I think that definitely speaks to how you think and how you are, and that you truly are an artist. I have yet to meet an artist who that hasn't happened to.
Yes.
So that kind of, leads me to, you did mention something about how the cover is what people remember. So does your creative thought process play into the cover when you're self-publishing? I imagine it does. But when you said you had a publisher, how much input can you give about what the cover will look like?
It depends. Sometimes there's a conversation about the cover,
Mhm.
and sometimes they just tell you this is the cover, and you're kind of stuck in it. If you looked at all my books, you probably would notice that one of the books, my book Choke, looks different than the rest. It looks a little older, even though it's not. There
Mhm.
was a lot of conversation about that cover, but with my first book, Confetti Girl, they sent me cover comps, and they sent me about 8 cover ideas, and
Mhm.
they asked me, for my opinion. The one that I liked most showed a girl's face,
Mhm.
and the one with the socks, which is the current cover, that one was my second choice, and they went with that, and they kind of did a sort of meshing of elements from the different covers in the final design. It's been a very successful cover.
Mhm.
Uh, my next 2 books, I didn't really have any say in the cover, but I wrote a book called Nothing Up My Sleeve, which is the first book I have that has an illustrated cover, not a photographic cover. And I remember when they sent me the sketch, I felt like the characters did not look Mexican American. They look like Archie cartoons. And I was like, they don't look Mexican American. And so I sent them pictures of my nephews, of my student, of the little ones that I've met, because I was trying to get a face on the cover. You know,
Mhm.
Confetti Girl has socks, and my next 2 books, Choke and Ask My Movie Ring, have the back of a girl's head.
Mhm.
Here was my chance to have a face, and they didn't look Mexican American. Well, they made the skin darker and the hair darker, but they didn't really change the facial features. And then we get to Lucky Luna, and they shared with me their cover comps, and the idea that they were kind of going with was a girl with a hat pulled over her face. So I wrote, I talked to my editor, and I said, why are we always covering the faces?
Mhm.
Why is it the back of the head? Or, I've got a friend who, in her book, it's like the character's, neck is, the ends right here. And, I just made an argument for showing a brown face, on the cover of a book.
Mhm.
And I started to look at the bookstores, and I noticed that the only ones that had brown faces were books that had they were big award winners, and this was like a second or third edition of the book with a different cover, or they had made it into the realm of classics. There really weren't too many contemporary books. She heard me, and she even sent me portfolios of models that they were considering and asked me what I thought. And when I saw this girl, I said, she looks like my nieces, she looks like my students, and she just has a little spunk. I knew I wanted her. And so they hired her, and they did a photo shoot, and we've got a face on the cover. And now I'm noticing that a lot more books with people of color are showing faces. So I see it as a new trend, and I'm really happy to be part of that new trend. And to find its visibility, it says something,
Mhm.
It's really an important marketing tool. And I love when young people tell me they love the cover.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many young kids they love the cover. It makes me so happy.
So do you have advice for other authors about what kind of cover they should choose? Should they go with their gut? Should they go with what the publisher recommends? Should it be a photograph? Should it be a cartoon, a drawing? What's your idea?
It's really hard to give that advice. A lot of it has to do with the publisher and how much leeway you have with them. I will say this. I will say, that I'm a writer. I'm not a graphic designer. My focus is on, I need to write a really good story. I don't really know, and I haven't studied design. And so I tend to trust, in the people that have, really put a lot of effort and time into learning that aspect of putting a book together. That said, covers people do judge books by their covers. That's the first introduction to the story. So if I feel really strongly about it, I'm not afraid to speak up. But as far as me designing a book, no, I can't do that. And I'm not sure how I feel about illustrated versus photograph. I've only had one illustrated book with an illustrated cover. All my books have been middle grade. With a picture book, it makes sense that you would have an illustrated cover. With middle grade, it's kind of hard to tell. I think my photographic covered books have done better, and I don't know if that has anything to do with the cover or the story or the length of the book. I mean, there's so many factors, but I tend to trust the people who have focused on design, book design.
Now, I'm sure that throughout this process, you have to have had a little bit of copyright advice or a little bird, chirping in your ear about the role of copyrights and trademarks in all of this. So can you share maybe just one important rule that you've learned maybe that will help other authors along their journey?
Well, I've had two publishing experiences. My first book was published by a university press, bilingual review press there in Tempe, Arizona. And I sent the manuscript to the editor, and I worked directly with the editor. And I remember my contract, it was about 3 pages long. Well, then in the intervening years, I got an agent. And so I have an agent. Full Circle Literary is a company. My agent's name is Stephanie von Borstel. We've been working together since 2005. And over my second book, my contract was like, I don't know, 20 to 30 pages long. It was so much longer because she understands, an agent understands what needs to go in a contract. And of course, it was a New York press. It was a different type of press. But she understands the negotiation aspect of things. And so I would say if you're a writer, having an agent has proven to me probably the most valuable experience I've had. I don't know how to negotiate. I'm not sure about all the questions that I need to ask. I talk to her and she shares with me things that I never even thought of, with the contract and stuff. And she gets to be my spokesperson, and she knows how to do it in a way that gets results without offending people, and that leaves me free to focus on my craft. So if you can find yourself a good agent, then you have to do your research, and it has to be a good, it's not easy. It really isn't easy, but you can find the perfect chemistry, somebody who knows what they're doing. They can handle that aspect, and you're going to fare a lot better, in my experience.
So that kind of leads me to a question about self-publishers. There are so many platforms out there that have made it easier now to self-publish for people that either find the process of finding an agent too difficult or maybe too expensive, just too cumbersome. So do you have any advice about self-publishing?
Let me say this about 8 reputable agents first. You don't pay them. They make like a commission, so they get a percentage of what you make. So you never pay an agent up front, and you don't pay editors. And I'm saying this because I have met too many people, I feel, who have been taken advantage of. Their desire to be published has led to them being vulnerable and being taken. And I absolutely hate to see that. So what I like to say is that there's a difference between publishers and printers, okay? So if it's a printer, you pay them. They might call themselves publishers, but they're really printers. If you're paying them to manufacture your book, that's a printer.
Mm-hmm.
Publisher pays you. They might not, they might not have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
It might just be a little bit of money, but a publisher pays you. So that's, to me, that's the difference. If you want to go the self-publishing route, I have met a couple of people who've had success. And it seems to me like these are people who have a niche.
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends, she published a book. It was like a history book about the history of a small town, Elores.
Mm-hmm.
And she had that niche. And, so she actually she sold her book to that community. She visited historical societies around Texas and did talks about it and sold her book at their meetings. And she was able to earn money from her self-published book.
Mm-hmm.
But I've met more self-published authors who have ended up with boxes of books that they can't sell because bookstores won't carry them. It's hard to get them reviewed, and so if you want to do that, then you need to find what environments will let you sell the book. Like she did the historical societies.
Mm-hmm.
She marketed herself. She did that. She was able to earn back. So it depends on your genre, but things like that, trade shows, if you're doing some kind of nonfiction book that's related to that, teachers, library days, if you're doing children's literature, there's library days. In Texas, there's a lot of, they're called library roundups.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's smaller book festivals that you can market directly to the public. So some people do like the farmers market or the arts and crafts kind of shows, and they try to sell there. But it is a challenge. It's a challenge. And so just be wary.
Yes.
I always say.
Well, thank you for that advice. And I think you definitely shed light on a very important issue, which is that it's very, very easy to get scammed, taken advantage of when you don't necessarily know the process. So thank you for sharing your experience about what you have gone through with this process, because I think you definitely clarified some things that maybe people didn't know already. Mm-hmm. So now that we're almost coming to an end, I also want to find out when you're writing, do you listen to music? Is there any one song in particular that really pumps you up, that really just gets you going?
What color is the sky? Ay, mi amor, ay, mi amor. You tell me that it's red. Ay, mi amor, ay, mi amor.
I can't listen to music when I'm writing because I have to be able to, I need silence because I need to be able to hear the voice of the character. And if the TV's on or music's on, I start listening to that instead. I'm very easily distracted by noise. And so I need a really quiet house. Unfortunately, I have a really quiet house, a really quiet husband. Sometimes when I want inspiration, I look at my fish. I have my little fishy tank right here by my desk. And they swim around, and they're quiet. So they're real peaceful. But also walking gives me the that kind of energy if I'm getting kind of sluggish. So I have my treadmill, or I go outside, I go walking. And so that's where I get my creative juices, looking at my fish or walking.
Good. Okay. And so I just want to know, do you have any words of advice for people that, need and want to monetize from their craft, no matter if they're writers, authors, painters, sculptors, what advice do you have for them?
My advice is that your first motivation should be love of the craft, whatever that craft is. Because if you love it, you're enjoying it while you're doing it. You're not necessarily thinking about how you're going to profit from it. Mm-hmm. You're thinking more about how can I make this the best? The best painting, the best story, the best sculpture. Mm-hmm. Once you do that, then you have something that's marketable. And I think that your audience, your patrons will follow. So always start from a place of love for the craft. And then once you have finished and you're satisfied with what you have, then you can start thinking of sharing it with the world. And I think the people will follow. Yes.
That's great advice. Well, Diana, I want to thank you so much for being on this podcast, for sharing your experience, your stories, your advice, your tips. Everything is much appreciated. So can you tell people where they can find you in case they want to reach out to you or purchase one of your books?
So I have a website, www.dianalopezbooks.com. Diana Lopez Books is also my Twitter and Instagram and Facebook handle. So if you want to follow me on those platforms, please, I'd be happy to have more followers.
Good. And we'll put that up on the screen for everybody, just in case they didn't catch it when you spoke it. So
excellent.
Thank you again, and well wishes.
Thank you.